through to today. This gardening tradition combines foods and medicines, but also the world of spirits, and this is different. Swept yards are swept daily to sweep out the spirits of the dead. After people die, according to many West African traditions, their spirits linger, seeking ways back to their original home in the sea. Such spirits have the power to cure, help, hurt, and can be managed by adepts who put together plant parts and other things to get the spirit to do what is needed. Such management is done by a sacred pharmacopoeia and has an early root in the greenhouse at White House. I was thinking how to explain to this audience what a sacred pharmacopoeia is, and immediately I remembered holy water. That's a kind of sacred pharmacopoeia in the European tradition. This other is much more complex, and it also works. African American gardening is what Europeans never intended to import into their plantations. Instead, what we see at Y through archaeology is what Europeans and white Americans got and that still lives. It is a separate culture with knowledge of plants, animals, food, medicine, household utensils, and African religion. This is a whole culture, equal and alive. So there are two gardening traditions here, including the one that defied European utopian planning, was imported anyway, thrives, and that can be recelebrated in the lovely shade provided by the recognition that today's new statue gives all of us. Europe and America wanted new resources and raw materials, but not necessarily new cooking or a new cuisine. But plantation life got a new cuisine anyway, and so did we. In addition to the information on plant foods we have from Y's greenhouse, there is another, a parallel body of information, and these are the Lloyd's cookbooks, in which there are about 100 recipes. The cookbooks were compiled beginning around 1852, but in all likelihood the recipes are considerably older, and are filled with recipes until at least 1881. They are rich, they are rare, they list 4 African-American cooks and 7 Lloyds. Reading cookbooks is not hard for either Amanda Tang or for me, because we both like to cook and to eat. But look, everybody here does. There are 2 reasons the food in these cookbooks is somewhat foreign. The Lloyds are eating brains and heads, which most people don't do anymore. There are few roasts, contrary to what we heard last night. Though it is a widely held notion that this would have been the fare of the Lloyds and others, there is almost no vegetables, however. There are almost no vegetables, except those that were pickled. There are a lot of desserts, and there are also a lot of breads. This was an English cuisine in its American manifestation, foreign to many of us now, but common earlier. Then, and more familiar to us in these cookbooks, there's rice and tomatoes, corn fritters, hoe cakes, tomato pickled cabbage, ginger cake, Indian meal muffins, sweet potato pone, buckwheat cakes, pickled peppers, strawberries. With these foods, we see these foods from the pollen in the living quarter in the greenhouse. Now, I found myself asking, is this Southern cooking? Well, we all know it is. But is this the origin of Southern cooking? One of the many origins of Southern cooking. In addition, I had to ask myself, when I got this question in my head, it's what really makes me want to go to dinner. At one point in the early 19th century, there were over 150 enslaved Africans at Y. They were all eating. A third were cooking. Most were gathering, growing, hunting, and fishing sometime during the day. In this environment, a cuisine was created, some of which comes from the gardening traditions that are African American. We call this Southern cooking and see it as a Southern tradition that involves some black elements. However, we could see it as what happened when whites bought people who were thought to have no culture. This isn't pleasant to say, but it is a strongly held hypothesis about what life was like before emancipation. And when whites bought plants and rented scientific gardeners to make a profit, they saw a plantation as a planned, scientifically run utopia with themselves in control. Whites bought people, plants, and science. However, they did not see that they imported into their utopian islands people who would make a unified, integrated way with food and who included religion while doing so. This is what later becomes Southern cuisine. It was probably served on both tables, memorized by cooks, but only written down by whites. Southern cooking and the cuisine eaten by many of us in Maryland today was not created solely by those who had the ability to write these cookbooks. Though it has become attributed to whites, Southerners today, Southern cooking was created equally by African Americans. In the greenhouse, therefore, and beneath the ground at Y, we have a microcosm, also a microenvironment that represents the processes of the whole Eastern Shore that are operating here. Beneath the veneer of utopian experimentation is a whole other and equal world of great value available to us all through archaeology.